We're live. Hello. Hello, welcome to Become the Change, the live weekly show all about conscious activism. My name's Sandy Levesque, and I'm joined today by Camille Wu and Candice Magna. Do you want to say hi, ladies?
Hello.
Hi. Hi,
And
everyone.
yay. So actually, we're kind of a diverse group because I'm out in France. Candice, you're in,
New Mexico, United States.
yeah, and Camille?
I'm in London, United Kingdom.
Yes. So the UN. So so normally, something about activism or, someone like a leader who's changed the world should be very serious. So we're going to ask that nobody smile or laugh or giggle, okay? Because only joking, obviously, but that was very good, girls. So just to give you, if it's the first time you're watching, because I know there are a few new people watching today. Basically, I created this show because I was an activist and a campaigner in a traditional sense. When you're campaigning against things, for me it was poverty and inequality, especially for women's rights. And I sort of immersed myself in that for about 10 years, at university and then afterwards, and even made it my profession. It started out as my passion in my spare time. And I became a paid lobbyist for women's rights, going to the parliament, harassing politicians and harassing anyone who would listen, to the point where my friends would be at parties would be like, oh no, there comes the radical feminist. And what happened, just to give you a very short background to why we're here, was that I actually got very ill and at quite a young age and realized that something wasn't quite right in my world, and that I was always focusing on toxic things, on problems, and that my body was starting to reflect that. So I sort of took a break from activism and realized recently that, activism doesn't have to be coming from a place of anger. It doesn't have to be seeing what you don't like in the world and trying to destroy it or change it. It can actually also be being a visionary and seeing something that's perhaps not here yet and actually speaking about it, having the guts to do that. So if you're watching this, I just want to commend you, because you're doing something that is a little bit strange. A lot of people might be watching TV, and I watch TV too. In fact, I'm going to watch Game of Thrones today. But I think we all have, not all of us, but some of us, for some strange reason, we just like doing things that aren't just about our own personal lives, things that can contribute on a bigger scale, whether you're interested in animals or children or the earth or the abusive food system. It could be all kinds of things. But this show is designed to help you get actual tips you can apply, especially using the internet, and also case studies and interviews to help you get inspired about what you can achieve, because very often it's a lot more than we think. So also welcome, Tracy. Welcome for coming. Welcome onto the show. We can't see you very well, Tracy. It's very dark, by the way. I think it's quite dark where I am because the sun is starting to go down. So today we're actually looking at Maya Angelou, who I'm sure you've all heard of, who passed away recently. Do you want to say hi, Tracy?
Yeah, hi.
Hello.
I'm having so many technical difficulties today.
Oh,
Anyway, hello.
at least you're here. Yay. Oh, and actually, I did something a little bit strange before this hangout. I went for a walk and I looked at the sky and I said, Maya, if you're out there, tell me what you'd like us to talk about, or tell me what you'd like to be shared from your life. And what came into my mind was just, I mean, the woman was amazing. I don't know if a lot of people know some of her quotes and know vaguely that she was an amazing writer and poet. But when you actually look at her whole life story, it's extraordinary. She did so much. And what I've done is I've looked at her work and her life story and taken 5 things that I think anyone can apply. Okay? So it's quite geeky. I even have slides. But what we're going to do is, if you guys want to chip in with anything as I go through this, it won't take that long, but then we'll just sort of talk more generally about Maya. And if you have any questions and you're watching this, you can post them in the Facebook group, and I shall take a look at that in a second as well. So just in case you don't really know much about Maya, I'll just give you a bit of her life story, you know, like story time. She was actually a poet, a novelist. She wrote plays. She was a producer for TV. She was an actress. She also made films. She learned how to dance. She was in she was also the first black female cable car driver in San Francisco. And when you look at everything she did, she packed about 10 lifetimes into one lifetime. So she was actually born in the 1920s, and she had a very difficult start. Like she actually she was mute for 5 years, and a lot of people do know this. But it's quite an interesting part of her story. She lost her voice, and when you look at her work from later on, a lot of it's about expressing yourself and not being caged. Like one of her most famous works is "Let the Caged Bird Sing," and she actually was abused as a child and then stopped speaking for a whole 5 years. And just imagine for a second, you know, not speaking for 5 years. That's an incredibly long time. But she came back from that, and she actually had a child very young, I think at like 16, and she worked as a waitress and a cook. But she loved music and dance and poetry, and she eventually actually started to do sort of musical theatre. And so she travelled around Europe and was in a production of Porgy and Bess, or Porgy and Bess, I never know quite how to say it. Sorry, George Gershwin. And Candice, maybe you know.
What was it again?
Porgy and Bess.
Porgy and Bess.
Oh, Porgy. Okay, not 4G. Okay, I think I'm reading it like orgy. I'm sorry, Maya.
Don't let me take me.
Ah.
Doesn't it also have a summertime and the living is easy?
Exactly.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, exactly.
She probably did a better rendition.
Well,
That was pretty good.
Yeah. We have a voice actor and a classically trained musician on this panel.
Oh man.
Together.
Yeah. Might have to do something of that in another show. So she then actually studied dance and actually went on TV and even recorded an album. This is back in the 50s. I'm just giving you her story just to show you, you know, it's quite interesting really to sort of study people that have created beyond what's normal in this world. You know, what's quite normal is just to sort of do your thing, get by, live your life, and
sit on your butt.
Yeah, basically. And so, you know, all of you here watching this and on the panel, you know, obviously slightly different, like Maya. And so she actually, she then became like a journalist and did editing for newspapers and moved to Africa, which I didn't know until I was researching today's show. And so she worked there for a while, and she actually met Malcolm X in Africa. And he asked her to come back to America and help him develop this university program that he was developing. But then he was assassinated, so she obviously couldn't do that, and the organization didn't carry on. It just kind of dissolved after he died. So another interesting thing about her was that she traveled a lot at this period in her life, and she made it a point of learning the language of every country she lived in. So she could speak about 7 languages by the time she was 40, apparently, which is quite amazing. And then I'm just reading from my notes that I took from her. So then she actually, what's fascinating about her is that she was very much, I think of her as a bit of a butterfly. You know, if something took her fancy, and we'll look at this in a bit of time, she would just move with it. She would follow the energy of things. So she had been doing musical theatre, then she went into journalism, and then at a dinner party, someone was saying to her, "You've had such an interesting life, why don't you write a book?" And so she did. And that's actually how she became a writer, because she wasn't planning on doing that. And so she also started to write for TV and for film, and she was one of the first African American women to ever write anything for TV. In fact, she was the first one. And one of the things she wrote was nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. She didn't get it, but she was nominated. And then she actually was in TV programs, and this is by the 70s. So then by the kind of 80s, she was writing a lot more, and she started to write tons of stuff. Like she wrote prolifically, like books and poets and poems, short stories. President Clinton asked her to read a poem when he was brought in as president during the inauguration ceremony, and she received over 50 honorary degrees. It's insane, like 50 of them. And she was on 2 presidential committees when Clinton was in power. And so that's kind of like the whistle-stop tour of her life. And we all kind of know her from a lot of the quotes that she penned when she was writing. And so, do you guys want to just add anything about her so far before I deeply go to the slides that I prepared?
I think you've covered about all that I know about her. I do remember hearing her during the Clinton inauguration, and it really struck me. I'm old enough.
Yeah.
And it was very, very. The president's inaugurated January 20th, and in Washington D.C., January 20th is a cold, cold day, 90% of the time, and that was no exception that year. And I bet everyone there forgot it was cold while she was speaking.
Yeah. Oh. How long did she read for?
Oh, just a couple of minutes, but
Powerfully.
5 or 10. But
yeah,
you just get lost in her words and her speaking, her voice, her power. You could really feel it,
Yeah. Oh wow. And so, actually, I would like to ask all of you before, just because I've been talking a lot, and it's going to be a bit boring for everyone if it's just. So, would anyone like to share like something that touched you about her? When you heard that she had died, did any of you follow her closely, or it doesn't matter if you didn't, but anything in particular that inspired you about her?
Her poem, "And Still I Rise," Rise, is one of the most succinct and I think beautiful series of statements of all the things that can happen to a person in their life, the situations from outside, from inside. The total story of that is we have choice. This happens and that happens. The world is like this, the world is like that, and yet still I rise. And as I reread that again at her death, I was so moved. I sat at my computer looking at messages from my friends and reading her poem, and it just brought me to tears.
Yeah. That's funny, actually, Candice. That I had the same experience after when I found out she died. I reread that poem too. I had to go for a walk afterwards because it was so powerful. I think, especially if you've ever felt, sometimes, because she touches a lot on you've got to keep going and just don't let things get you down because you're better than that. Almost is how I sort of sense what she's saying. Oh, you've just posted it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
I move fast.
Yeah. Oh, actually, maybe Tracy, seeing as you're a voice actor, could I ask you to read it?
I'm not as familiar with this. Maybe Candice would be better to read this. She knows this poem.
I could do that. I could do that.
I would botch it up.
Oh, there's some noise coming from someone's side. Do you mind, Candice? Or
I would be honored.
oh, thank you. It's in the. Can you see it in the group chat?
Yes.
Okay.
You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You have trapped me in the very dirt, but still, not. My sadness upset you. Why are you beset with gloom? As I walk, look, I've got oil wells pumping in my living room. Just like moons and like suns, with the certainty of tides, just like hope springing high, still, I'll rise. Do you want to see me broken, bowed head and lowered eyes, shoulders falling down like teardrops, weakened by my soulful cries? Does my haughtiness offend you? Don't you take it awful hard? 'Cause I laugh like I've got gold mines digging in my own backyard. You may shoot me with your words. You may cut me with your eyes. You may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Does my sexiness upset you? Does it come as a surprise that I dance like I've got diamonds at the meeting of my thighs? Out of the huts of history's shame I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain I rise. I'm a black ocean leaping and wide, welling and swelling I bear in the tide, leaving behind nights of terror and fear. I rise into the daybreak that's wondrously clear. I rise bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave. I am the dream and the hope of a slave. I rise. I rise. I rise.
Oh, thank you so much, Candice.
That was nice.
That was really beautiful. Thank you.
It is, isn't it? It's nice to hear it read out, because sometimes, you know, you can read things on a computer screen, but when you hear a human voice expressing them, it's different. Thank you so much, and thanks for posting it, Tracy.
You're welcome, and it was a good choice for me not to read it because I don't have diamonds between my thighs.
Are you sure?
That could have been interesting. Yeah, I guess especially seeing as she was a great writer for women's rights. That it was appropriate we have Candice read. Thank you. Yeah, and so Kemi, sorry, I haven't asked you any. Would you like to share anything, or okay?
What happened when she died was I'm in London, and in London, when around the time that it happened, a certain political party had just won an election, and this political party is known for being right-wing and kind of on the racist side. So what I noticed was on my Facebook there was a lot of sadness. There was a lot of like people being really angry and confused, like what has happened, why has this happened? And I was feeling quite down about it. And then a few days later, Maya Angelou passed, and suddenly my Facebook was filled with quotes of love and quotes of hope and poems, and everyone, it just shifted the whole energy. And I remember I said to my friend, I said, look at, even though all this had happened and everyone was feeling really disheartened, her passing came like something, you know, angelic, and then everything changed. And I was just like, thanks, Maya. I mean, like, it's sad that she passed, but something, it was like, it was beautiful what happened. So oh, thank you for sharing that. Welcome.
Yeah, that's a great example actually of why I believe personally that, you know, conscious activism is really important, because when you focus on bad stuff, you literally give it more energy. It's like you're feeding it, you know. And and a lot of my old friends kind of look at me and be like, oh yeah, but now you're just pretending it's not there. And I don't agree with that, because I don't think you're not pretending it's not there. You don't close your awareness. You just, it's almost like you become stronger than the problem, so that eventually the problem is just like this pathetic little weed. And imagine if there was just such, and there is, I believe, like an awakening of consciousness and of people realizing that. And we're just kind of in the beginning of it, I believe. So it's and what you just described is an exact example. I mean, that's talking about Facebook, but if you applied that on a global level, imagine what would happen, you know, instead of all the anger and hate that people have. Yeah. So I'll just screen share quickly just to show you my geeky slides. Yeah. PowerPoint rocks. I am that geeky.
Oh no, what's that?
Oh, that's you guys.
That's called that's infinity. You found infinity.
Okay, can you guys see okay?
Yeah.
Cool. And this is not like to sort of preach, teaching everyone what to do because of Maya Angelou. It's more like just sharing things that stood out to me when I was studying her that I think we can all take from her story. And so one of the big things that is just so amazing about her is she's kind of like the Madonna, I believe, before Madonna, because she wasn't afraid to sort of switch tracks. She would just change. It was almost like if the wind was taking her in a new direction, and that was another way she could express the idea she had, she would take it. So she started out in music and dance and theatre. She went to Africa and worked as a newspaper editor in several different countries, in Ghana and Egypt. Then she got asked by Malcolm X to go and help him, and she began politics and civil rights. And actually, something I forgot to mention was that she kind of spoke about this at some points. One of her regrets was that she was asked by Malcolm X to, I'll just come back, to help him with this university. And she said yes, but then she postponed actually going the date she was supposed to leave, and he was assassinated. Not because of her postponing, but that's just what happened. And then, sometime after, Martin Luther King asked her to help him. And again, for some reason, she was so busy, she had to cancel. She didn't cancel, she postponed. And he was assassinated. So she just...
Remind me not to ask for any favors.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. So she spoke sometimes about, not being afraid. The time is never right. That's one of her famous quotes. Or I've butchered it a bit, but basically that's the gist of it. And she learnt the hard way. She sort of regretted that. But the other things that stood out from her story were that. Let me just come back here. Oh yeah. So a big part of her life was writing. That was actually probably what she spent the most, she did all these different things, but writing was one of the things she did the most for like the last 20, 30 years of her life. And what's interesting about her is that she made it a big part of her life. Like she says here, I make writing as much a part of my life as I do eating or listening to music. So what does that actually mean? Well, I did some detective work. This is what she would do. She had a routine that she used for years and that enabled her to sort of be very productive and to actually write a lot, like physically write a lot. So she would, that's Maya speaking.
I'm guessing it's London.
It's France.
No?
There's a car alarm, and that never happens. That's so strange. And we
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. So what she would do, and this is actually a really good example of how powerful a habit is. I'm a big believer in using our instinct to be quite habitual creatures. And a lot of people have habits that don't really work for them, and that they're not really aware of them. When you become consciously aware of the little things that you do every day, they add up to big things, And so Maya was aware of that. She would wake up early. She liked to work in hotel rooms, and she would tell the staff to remove any distractions from the wall. And she would write on legal pads from her bed with a bottle of sherry. I'm not sure if she did this every single day. A deck of cards, a thesaurus, and the Bible. And she would leave by early afternoon. She'd write an average of 10 to 12 pages of writing a day, and she would then take the evening to edit it down. So, you might read that and think, well, I have a job, or I do something, I can't write all day long, or whatever your passion is, or you would like to do more of. But what you can take from her story is just doing a little bit of it each day. Because actually something that I came across recently is a guy called John Maxwell. And Tracy, you might remember I talked about this in the other group that we do. Basically, John Maxwell is a big speaker in America, a personal development guy. I'd never heard of him. I'm not sure he's as big in Europe. But he decided when he was 18 to read for an hour each day and to write for an hour each day. And so he decided to just do that because he loved to write. And so he would do it in the morning. And what happened is that at first, nothing really happened. He just was doing it. But by the time he was 25, he started to notice a difference between him and his friends who weren't reading or writing, and that they weren't really growing, like they were sort of still doing the same stuff they were doing when they were 18. And by the time he got to 40 and he was still reading and writing, the gap was huge. His friends would say to him, "How come you get paid to write and you've written bestsellers?" And he was having beyond average success, becoming the change that he wanted to see. Seeing people actually loving their work and being paid well to do it. And by the time, now he's in his 50s, 60s, he's just, in a different level, basically. And he attributes it mainly to reading and writing every day. So I thought that was interesting. Maya obviously had a similar passion as well. Do you guys do any reading or writing? Or I guess it doesn't mean you have to read or write, but do you do anything that's, consciously expanding your awareness, I guess?
I try.
You do.
I'd say that I've been listening to personal development audio for years and reading
yeah.
It helps. It helps get you back on track. If I leave it alone, if I stop doing that for 6 or 7 months, excuse me, I can feel the difference in my life, and then I feel like I take things more personally, and I get more negative, and then I just have to steer myself back on track and click and listen to Proctor or if I'm really Deepak Chopra, or it depends what part of me is hurting the most. So yeah.
Yeah.
I used to write every day until I became. I used to write every day until I became an editor.
Yeah.
And now I find it hard to read every day because I spend half my time fixing garbage. And when I'm done, I just want to stare out into space for a couple of hours and not look at any written words.
Yeah.
So, but how about you, ladies?
Well, I read something every day, but I make sure that what I'm reading isn't the newspaper. Maybe a little bit of the local news, but that's so local and so small. Online, I stay away except for some headline things of positive kind of news writing, not the mainstream media, to glean the places where there's choices being made that are leading in positive directions, or circumstances where people are coming to consensus from various sides of a problem, maybe distinctly different sides of problems, but finding some common way of talking about them for good. I'm really careful about the kind of news, let's say, that I read, but I like to read uplifting things. I meditate in some sort of way almost every day, and like Tracy, I'd say a lot of my reading is how to, self-improvement, let's say.
Yeah.
How to be, to contribute to the change we want to see, let's say.
Yeah.
And I'm a musician, so I listen to music every day. But unlike most people, I don't have music on in the background. I had a
Ah,
friend stay with me for a while, and he said, I can't stand this. What do you do for music here? You never listen to anything. It's like,
ah.
what do you mean? There's music going on all the time. It's 24/7 Radio Candace.
Will you hear it? Yeah.
There's so much music going on in my head all the time that other things are a distraction, and I cannot work or concentrate on something else if there is music that I like in the background. The only time I can do that is driving in the car.
Yeah.
It's taken me years to find the right music that I can work to, but I have to like it. You know, I can only work to Chopin,
Oh.
and because I can turn it on and off. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In my head, I can turn it on and off.
Right.
Nobody's singing.
And I'm a singer, so anything that has words, I will be listening to the words.
Yeah.
So I can't have vocal music going on and type, let's say.
Yeah. Too distracting.
Right.
Kemi, do you do any reading or writing or?
Every day, I write a blog and I read all the time. I also stay away from mainstream, although it can be hard being in London because it's everywhere. Like on the tubes and on the roads, it's always on the street because you get free newspapers in the morning and free newspapers in the evening, and people throw it on the street. So often it's hard to avoid seeing the news line, the headlines and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been reading this stuff since I was really young because of my whole journey with getting sick when I was younger and going on a long healing journey and working on self-development and healing and all these things. So there's always more to discover. So yeah.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me. I think I couldn't understand for a while why people would always talk about reading in a personal development sense, because I always grew up reading for escapism. I loved to read fiction as a child. I read all the time, and so the idea of reading about daily life was really boring to me. and it wasn't until I started to see the world a bit differently and realized, oh my God, when you don't read, it's like you're so in the matrix, you know, or whatever you call it, the normal way of life, that it's almost like you just don't see beyond it. You know, it's like it's so normal. You know, I read tons of books about poverty and inequality against women, and like you can study in detail the system around you, but these books, they're like a doorway into just a different way of seeing the world that you can actually then start to live and become that change. And so Maya's books are a great example of that, I think, as well.
They say the average person. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say there is a newspaper in the UK called Positive News.
Oh.
And it's really good. Like I go on that website, Positive News website, and they also have they send one out every month, but it's just full of the good stuff, and it helps when you read the normal news full of, you know, quite horrible things. Positive News is all about what people are doing to change things, change makers, and it's about people, you know, climate change, but in a good way, eco-living, all these kind of things. And it's good. Like, when I first came across it, I was like, this is amazing. And so, yeah.
Yeah. And you can notice. Oh, go on, Tracy.
No. I was just going to say I've been on a complete news blackout for 2 months. And it's pretty amazing because I used to watch all these political talk shows from MSNBC on podcast, and it was always just so negative, and politics, it's just American politics. It's just so awful.
And British politics.
Now I live in the south of France. I don't speak French well enough to get what's going on when my girlfriend watches the news. And if I see the newspapers, I can kind of make out the headlines, but I don't even bother. So my girlfriend says I'm a much happier person lately because I used to be I worked in newspapers for years.
Yeah.
And I was a news junkie, and I couldn't help it. And you know, as an editor, what I edit is a Korean business magazine written in English, and so it's all propaganda and lies anyway. The companies write the stories and send it to the magazine. The magazine translates it into English, sends it to me. I fix it up. It's a bunch of rah-rah. I don't really believe it, so it doesn't really count. It's like I might as well be editing fiction, you know. So it's so good to not be part of that matrix.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to add is that I don't know if this only applies to Americans. It probably does. The average American reads, I forget if it was less than one book a year, or was it one book a decade? I can't remember, but I know it was very, very, very troublingly low. Like after high school, lots of people never touch a book again, or after university, they never touch a book again.
That's interesting.
And I feel bad if I read fewer than 20 books, 15 books a year. I feel really bad. My girlfriend probably, in French and English, reads about 35, 40 books a year. So,
wow. Yeah. And the funny thing is, when you look at the stats of how many hours of TV people watch, it's so different. It's like that high. The books are here. Not that I sound like I'm an anti-TV person, but I also watch it. But I don't just sit there and watch it like I used to years ago as a child.
Yeah.
Family would do that.
I haven't watched TV in a month. I haven't watched it in a month, and I do miss certain shows, but I feel like there's not enough time in the day, and there's so many things I need to do. You know what I mean? For work and just to get ahead and to make myself better. And I don't know if CSI is going to turn me into a better person or not.
Although sometimes someone once, because I used to be the same, Tracy. I would never sort of have any downtime. To the point where my flatmates at one point would like tied me to the sofa and ordered me to watch. I think it was like Orange County or something, the OC.
The OC.
Oh boy.
Because I was always doing voluntary work or like working in my actual paid job or going to lectures for university, and what I heard from someone else later on was that, you know, sometimes if you're taking in all this information, watching TV actually allows you to process it. You know, it's like it just gives your brain a bit of time out to
shut down,
chill out. And so when I started to see it like that, I was like, oh, okay. And sometimes, but I also get that from just going for a walk. So it depends, you know. Sometimes it's nice to just be out in nature.
Can I just say something? Last night I was at the opening of a brand new bookstore in central London.
Yeah.
And it's called Foyles, and it's like one of the largest book companies. It's a massive store. It's 6 floors. And because it was the opening, they were having speeches and stuff, and the guy who opened the store, and he's like one of the main people involved, was saying, he gave a whole speech and he kept saying, really, we have no divine right to be opening this bookstore with what's really going on, as in like nowadays everyone just has Kindles or they don't even read anymore or they just buy ebooks. Yeah. But he was kind of like, it was quite like, he was like, but we're gonna still do this. And there were 700 people there, and I just, it was amazing because I went around with my friends looking at the books, and it was just incredible how many books there are, and I was just like, there are books about this and this and this, and so it's really interesting that we're having this conversation now after what happened last night, because I had this whole new awakening to books again, and I was like looking at all the children's books, looking at all they have books about anything you can imagine, and I'd forgotten this, like being in the 6-story massive book shop or whatever, it was just incredible. So I don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah, that's like going.
But have you ever opened up your Kindle and smelled the pages?
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, having, you know, digital books and things is also a blessing, because people can access information wherever they are. You can read in bed without having to turn on the light.
Yeah.
You can travel without an extra suitcase full of books.
Yeah.
And you know, and you can find. I read in Italian sometimes, but there are many words that I don't know, so that I just flick over to my dictionary that's in my iPod, and it's right there. And I think some people, for example, turning this back around to Maya Angelou, that at her death, poems kept coming up everywhere on the internet, on Facebook and in email and in the news and and that exposure in that very brief span of time, without expense, without going out of your way to go to the library or find something out. It was just there. And if only a phrase is extracted and maybe put onto a picture that somebody sends to someone else, it's still sharing, sharing the light, sharing the good, sharing the words that can mean something to someone else. And those little bits of infiltration, you might say, aside from the lovely smell of the books, is much more pervasive. But I go and I work in the archives in Venice. Talk about old books and old book smells.
Wow. Cool.
Wow.
Yeah, it is thrilling. And also to be able to go online and into a digital library that you used to have to get permission, fly to the city, apply to see the rare books in some archive or rare book room. Maybe they would take photographs for you, or otherwise you copied by hand. And now I found things that I didn't even know existed, but which are important in a particular field of study, let's say, because of this interconnectivity. So we have both sides of, how are we going to use this for good or for not? How are we going to connect or not? How are we going to choose to put the information out there in ways that it can be received?
Yeah, and that's actually
Right.
Yeah, that's a great link into what a lot of the work I see that we do is that it's like using social media and the internet as a way to help change the world. Not the only way. I don't think it can replace written books or people actually going to meetings or like action in the streets. But I do think it can be a really powerful tool. And Maya, actually, one of the things I was going to share in my geeky slideshow was, I'll come back to it here. I'll just open it. She kind of moved with the times. Where was it? Here. She used Twitter and Facebook as easy as anyone else in her 80s. And actually, her last tweet was so powerful, and it was kind of like the fourth thing that I found about her, was she was very much in touch with her creative genius, like, as in, she talked to like the universe, or she called, she was religious, she spoke about God, but she said in her last tweet, listen to yourself, and in that quietude, you might hear the voice of God. And what an amazing last tweet to have. And it sounds a bit silly to say last tweet, but so many people were touched by that, and then that she passed afterwards. And she was, I think that was part of her creativity, was that she recognized she had a connection to things that were greater than her. I don't mean greater as in better, but bigger than her, unseen things, and she tapped into it. And that's actually how a lot of creative people used to work centuries ago. It kind of got taken away a bit when things became very scientific, but there's a great TED talk I always tell people to watch about this, from the woman who wrote Eat, Pray, Love, huge bestseller book. And she talks about how, when Socrates and Plato and long time ago, that they always talked about having a genie, like a little creature, some kind of connection to outer forces and to the universe. And they never assumed that the words coming out of them were all from them. They knew it was coming from elsewhere. And I think Maya was so aware of that, and that's part of what she was channeling when she was so, so productive, creating so much, and took the time to listen, like she's saying, in the quietude. And so the last thing actually that I thought about her was that she never gave up. You will face many defeats in your life, but never let yourself be defeated. and she said so many beautiful things. That's not really my favorite one. Well, there's so many, but it just is such a powerful theme of her life, because she, even though she started from really quite horrible beginnings, and she also got very depressed after Malcolm X was killed. Like, she got into a depression and couldn't get out of it for a while. But she did, you know, she found people that could inspire her again, and she lifted herself out of it, and she just kept adapting and changing so much that, to me, she's a great example of just keep persisting, and you'll reach whatever you want to reach, you know. So, yeah. Would anyone like to share anything else before we wrap up?
I just want to say, I don't know if you noticed that I put a link to a bunch of her amazing quotes just above the Ray Bradbury quote about writing.
Yeah.
It's just chock full of just gems. You know, you could sit at home all night and make little memes with photos with them.
Yeah.
And just make a whole folder of Maya Angelou memes and dole them out one at a time for the next 15 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, like this. I like this quote you've got here. You must write every single day of your life. You must lurk in. This isn't her though, is it?
No, it's Ray Bradbury.
Okay. Who's Ray
science
Bradbury?
fiction writer. He wrote a famous book called Fahrenheit 451.
Yeah.
It was a book about kind of a future world where books were banned. Interesting book. Interesting writer. There was another also more famous book that I can't remember the name of, but yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually looking for the quote, a writer writes every day. I wondered who said that. I thought maybe it was in a Stephen King's book on writing that I read years and years ago, but it could have been somebody else.
Yeah. And the thing is, that if you're watching this, you know, now, or thinking, well, I don't want to write, you know, that's not really my thing, because there's so many different ways you can have an impact in the world. Writing is just one of them. But the thing to take away from her story, I think, is what she said about for her, writing was her biggest love. She just loved it so much, so she made sure she did it. To her, it was as important as, you know, drinking or brushing her teeth. And I think a lot of people, and I've done this so much, things that you love, you just kind of do it on special occasions, or when you have time at the end of the day, which usually gets pushed to the next day or the next day. And Maya was very clear that she wanted to be a writer. She had ideas to share. She knew she could touch people, and so she made it a routine and did it every day. So whatever whatever your thing is, you know, it could be surfing and helping people surf and enjoy the planet. It could be making music like Candace, or
It's the route to greatness in anything is to just do it every day. Mastery takes 10,000 hours, and I'm sure Candace knows this old joke. How do you get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice.
Yeah. Instead of turn left and then right out the gate. Yeah. And it's true. Like in last year I made a video every day, and I didn't do it to become good at videos. I did it for personal transformation, but as a side effect, I developed video editing skills that, you know, people are now actually willing to pay me for. And I've had several people say, could you make me videos? And it's not really something I really want to do, but you just and I didn't spend the whole day. I would spend an hour perhaps a day making a video, but just the sheer repetition, you just become so much. You can compress time frames and do things that people would take 10 years. You can do it in like a year, I think.
And you had personal transformations.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I just love videos. I'm like a video addict. Well, not really addict. Like fan, let's say. That's a bit of a name.
This might be a topic then for another time, another one of these sessions. And that is, what is that, you say, like addiction to this particular thing that you love to do, a positive addiction, perhaps, obsession, compulsion. I I never say that I'm OCD, which means obsessive compulsive disorder, because I don't see it as a disorder. And when I have squelched that, which is like for many decades, those are the times that I'm least creative, least able to focus in on something. And there's a movement afoot, I would say, probably globally, but certainly in the United States, to for children to put them in therapy or give them medication when they are so focused on dinosaurs or Legos or
spaceships, yeah,
anything. But how do we become fabulous musicians or great writers, poets, or mechanics, for that matter? Anything is by being so totally absorbed by it that we can hardly imagine not doing that for part of a day.
Yeah.
And if that becomes a bad thing, that we are not willing to spend the time, then we're squelching the scientists, the mechanics, the inventors, the engineers, the musicians, the artists, the cooks, the entrepreneurs, who otherwise would be so focused on something that they would spend every minute they could to make it the best possible thing.
Yeah.
Can I say something now after that?
Yeah.
My passion and my thing that I seem to get addicted and drawn into is helping these children that you're talking about. So that's really interesting you're saying that, because I guess, Candice, have you heard of Ken Robinson?
No.
Okay, well, I'll link you, or like maybe Sandy can show you Ken Robinson's talk about this. But this is like
amazing.
This is like my niche at the moment, is really wanting to help children or adults who've been diagnosed with ADHD or even autism, dyslexia, all these things, and being put on medication. So when you were talking, I was like, yes, this is exactly what I believe, and this is my passion. And when before you even said anything, I was thinking, what's my passion? I think it's this. And then you started talking about it, and I went, uh-oh. So
well, there's our next meeting. But in that line, I'll say, when I've had several students. I teach singing, teach music privately, and because it's private, I can do anything I want. And so the autistic students, for example, that I've had, as soon as they come in, and I kind of see what they can do, I don't give them an evaluation. I say, well, I can see what your superpower is.
Yeah.
And you hear something and you can just do it right away. That was amazing. I'm playing this, and you're singing like you've always known this song, and I know that you're not reading the music. You have a really cool superpower. All right, now let's put this to work with some other things that we'll learn.
Yeah.
To make it even more efficient. It's great, but to take it away, to take the superpowers away, is like trying to do surgery with boxing gloves on.
Yeah.
I tried that. It's horrible.
God.
I gotta say though, the whole ADHD thing and squelching creativity. When I was a kid, when we didn't have that, we were just called children. There was no ADHD. You were just like active.
The kind of kid.
I mean, that was me, and what they did for me was, I actually took an IQ test as a kid. My IQ's gone significantly down since then, but they put me in a gifted and talented class for a year, and I excelled in that. But and one of my best friends skipped a grade. And I would have skipped a grade, but they said I was like emotionally not ready to go from 4th grade to 6th grade. So, I would have definitely been diagnosed with ADHD nowadays.
Me too.
And my desire to be a writer or any of that probably would have disappeared every time I popped the pill.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, it's just a horrible thing. It's like if a kid's got ADHD, give him a soccer ball. do whatever.
Yeah.
And because I would go to the local high school when I was in 5th grade because they had really tall walls, and I would just kick a ball against the wall over and over again for hours until I got really, really good. And because I could focus like that for hours and hours, or I could not focus for hours and hours. But yeah. I think, and they kick kids out of school for when their parents refuse to give them the drugs. So it's a crazy world.
Yeah. That's why we
We're
need
on that
people
way.
that are. That's why we need change makers that can speak about, like Ken Robinson, like making that TED talk and people sharing what he said in that speech and sort of carrying his word. So.
Yeah, he's like my hero at the moment. So.
Yeah. Oh, well, I'll post them. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, do you know him, Tracy?
No, I don't. I'll have to look him up. I'll write him. Actually,
he's got
I'll
the
look
most watched TED talk ever. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On creativity in young people, it's amazing, isn't it, Camille?
Mm-hmm.
So thank you, everyone, for coming out. Go on.
I have his TED talk right now. It's ready to play.
Oh, amazing.
That's how fast. Thank God for the internet. I didn't have to go to the library and check out a dusty old book. Flip the pages really fast to make it look like a TED talk.
Well, I have Chico asking why. He's so funny. He gives me an hour to not give him attention, and he starts he's got his paws on my foot.
Oh, he's got ADHD.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming out, everyone.
It was fun.
Thank you for being here. Great. And for everyone watching, we're all part of a team using an online system, you could call it, to sort of learn how to share things, share your message on the internet, and also just, I think, to leverage your time so that you don't have to spend your whole waking hours, just earning a living, and you can actually have time to go out and do voluntary work or do activism or, whatever it is that you want to do, as well as your actual your job. So if you would like more information about what we do, then whoever sent you here, there'll be some information, somewhere you can get information about that, or just contact us on Facebook. And thank you for watching.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. See you later. I'm going to close it up now. Goodbye, everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.